The sun hadn't cleared the ridgeline when engines started whining across the flight line. By 6:15 a.m., the Mojave Air Base shimmered under desert heat. The sky was pale and silent, but the ground buzzed with motion. Crews rolled ladders to cockpits, techs loaded pallets of gear, and a pair of C-130s taxied slow along the far apron. Near the northern tarmac, two F-22s sat open canopy while their pilots adjusted harness straps and joked under breath. Behind a maintenance truck, Captain Erin Blake walked alone. Her flight gloves were looped through her belt, her hair twisted tight under a worn cap. She carried a slim checklist board and moved like she'd done this every day for years. Her steps made no sound on the concrete. Her uniform was regulation, but not new. Sun-faded patches curled slightly at the seams. Nobody greeted her. She passed a knot of younger pilots clustered under shade near a service cart. One of them glanced up and lowered his voice. "Think that's the backup Viper crew." His friend gave a quick smirk. "Nah, she's probably just logging hours. That jet's not even on the board." Erin didn't slow. A ramp mechanic stepped back from a ground cart and caught sight of her heading toward the last stall. He said nothing, but followed her with his eyes. Just outside the designated maintenance zone, a cluster of ground crews were hosing grit from a weapons dolly. The water steamed off the pavement. They didn't look up. Her jet sat alone under a partial overhang near the perimeter fence, an F-16C Block 30, older airframe, flat gray finish, the kind of bird most training squadrons rotated out 10 years ago. Its leading edge was streaked with thermal wear, the side panel markings nearly invisible. The serial numbers on the tail looked half erased by time. Still, Erin approached with quiet precision. She set the board down on the wing root and ran her hand along the fuselage line like she was tracing an old scar. Across the field, another pilot leaned against the rear stabilizer of a T-38, sipping from a thermos. His head tilted slightly. "Is she really flying that thing?" he said. Not loud, but not quiet either. "Bet the avionics still use dials." Another voice answered with a short laugh. "Must be a museum loner." No call sign on her crate. None of it reached her face. Erin unlatched the nose panel and inspected the intake, one step at a time. She pulled a flashlight from her vest pocket and angled it up through the bypass fan, checking for debris. Her movements were slow but precise, the kind of inspection done more from habit than requirement. The sun climbed higher. Shadows shortened. Dust curled near the taxi lanes. Fuel trucks rolled past and helicopters spun up in the distance. Over the commnet, a detached voice called for final clearance on a launch schedule. Erin stayed in the background. She wasn't on the list. Inside the logistics tent, a laminated flight board showed call signs in neat rows. Hammer 2, Vulture 4, Echo Lead. There was no mention of her, but at the bottom corner, written in marker and smudged from someone's thumb, a single entry sat alone. Viper 1. No lead. No mission code. Just a note available. Erin had seen it earlier that morning. She hadn't erased it. She hadn't asked why. Back on the line, a young airman jogged past her F-16 tossing a half-full water bottle onto a bench. He didn't speak. A wrench clattered to the floor 2 bays down. The air smelled like fuel and scorched metal. Erin finished the pre-flight, flipped the avionics panel shut, and clipped her gloves onto the side rail. She stepped back to eye the landing gear, checked the tread with her heel. Nothing moved faster than necessary, nothing out of rhythm. And still, no one called her name. There was a time when her name came first in the briefing room. Before younger voices filled the airwaves and younger hands filled the cockpits. Back then, Captain Erin Blake flew the A-10 Thunderbolt II low and loud over the Helmand River Valley. The ground crews called her Steady. The Marines under fire called her something else. Lifeline. She wasn't flashy. She didn't talk much on comms. But when the smoke hit the ridgelines and JTACs called fast movers too far north, Erin was already inbound. Her Warthog hugged the terrain like it knew the valley's edges better than GPS ever could. She learned the land through maps her father had once folded and carried, the same way he taught her to trace the shape of canyons by memory, not screen. In Kandahar, they said she flew like she had no nerves. Truth was, she had them all. She just knew what to do with them. One night, she flew 3 runs over a hot compound, close enough that dirt kicked up into her intakes. She rearmed in 10 minutes and went back. When one of the Marines thanked her later, she nodded once and handed him the bullet casing from her GAU-8. She didn't say a word. But that was 5 years ago, before a faulty fuel line forced an emergency landing near Camp Bastion, before the chain of command shuffled her into non-flying roles while the investigation dragged on. It wasn't her fault. Everyone said so. But paperwork moves faster than fairness. Her rotation ended with a quiet reassignment. Stateside. No command. No flight lead. At Nellis, she kept flying. She logged hours in the trainer sims. She took transition time in T-38s. Then someone remembered she had jet hours logged on the Viper. They gave her a Block 30 old but serviceable and listed her under reserve asset. No radar upgrade, no AESA, just a basic APG-68 with standard scan. She never complained. Most days. She flew at dawn, long before the others. Maintenance crews would still be checking landing gear torque, and she'd already be airborne, carving airspace like it was penance. Her aircraft didn't have the new data link systems or advanced targeting pods. She used what it had: basic radar, aged HUD. Her eyes. Some called it stubborn, others called it denial, but she wasn't chasing anything. She was just staying sharp. The F-16 wasn't the A-10. It didn't forgive mistakes. That was fine. She didn't need forgiveness. She needed the sky. In off hours, she'd sit by her aircraft with a spiral notebook, not a tablet, not an app, just a pen and old-school muscle memory drills, emergency flow, terrain scan, throttle band control. No one asked her why. They assumed she missed the fight. They didn't understand she missed the silence before it, the seconds before the radio call came, when everything still felt whole. By the time new officers arrived, Erin was already a fixture. Quiet, efficient. Some thought she was ground crew. Others thought she was retired. Nobody really asked. They just saw a woman flying an aircraft nobody else wanted. She let them think what they wanted. She wasn't there to prove anything. The people who needed her already had their answers. They'd seen her dive through sandstorms and bank under mortar trails. They'd heard her voice when it mattered. Calm. Exact. A single word at the right second. Now, when she stepped toward that weathered F-16, nobody cheered. Nobody saluted. But for the few who knew what that airframe had been through and who had flown beside her when things got real, there was only one thought. She's still here, and she still flies. By 07:30 a.m., the staging ground near El Centro was already buzzing. The Marines had set up their forward elements just south of a decommissioned airstrip. Sand-colored Humvees lined the outer berm, while a platoon of infantry prepped along the south fence, checking optics and loading live blanks for the simulation. The entire exercise had been on the calendar for months. Operation Hawk Gate, simulated capture of a critical forward base, with coordinated air support from the 492nd Fighter Wing. Standard joint training. 2 F-22 Raptors had been assigned for top cover, along with a pair of MQ-9 Reapers providing ISR feeds from above. The plan called for an initial breach at 0800, followed by a ground push across the tarmac while Raptors monitored potential air threats in Red Force simulation. But at 0747, the comms tent received a reroute order from Creech. Both Raptors were redirected north to intercept an unexpected air incursion across a live sector. They were gone within 6 minutes. No replacement was available. The closest fast mover sat idle under shadecloth at the end of the taxiway. Viper 1, Captain Aaron Blake. No tactical assignment, no air tasking order, not even a comms code logged for the live link, just a notation that read available. Inside the temporary command tent, Major Castillo scanned the new air picture. Without the Raptors, they had only drone feeds and a single manned jet in range. He gave a short exhale, then tapped the side of his earpiece. Viper 1. This is Control. Confirm standby. Passive overwatch only. Do not descend unless ordered. Erin was already strapped in by then. Her F-16C Block 30 had been fueled and prepped at sunrise, though no one expected it to fly. The canopy was closed. The avionics panel lit soft green. She responded on secondary comms, her voice steady. Copy. Viper 1 holding at altitude. Passive overwatch. No descent unless cleared. At 12,000 feet, she banked gently to the southeast, maintaining a racetrack pattern just outside visual range of the objective. Her radar sweep was clean, no weapons armed, no target tracking. The jet stayed level, engines quiet beneath her. Her eyes scanned the valley below. The Marines moved on foot in staggered formations across the field. Dust curled from their boots. One of the JTACs relayed GPS markers to the Reapers for confirmation. The training munitions would simulate impact zones, but the risk was real enough. Any airborne contact beyond schedule could confuse the scenario in seconds. Erin adjusted her throttle slightly, maintaining spacing with the drone orbit above. The F-16's older avionics required manual corrections more often. She didn't mind. The machine still flew with purpose if you treated it right. No one else seemed to believe that. Down below, a second comms officer relayed their reduced air coverage status to the Marine forward lead. The reply came clipped. Understood. Continuing advance. No deviation. Inside her cockpit, Erin scanned the checklist pad wedged below her left console. She had drawn the target grid by hand earlier that morning. It wasn't required. She did it anyway, out of habit, not optimism. The sky above her remained calm, blue streaked with early haze, the kind of morning that looked too quiet to be real. She checked comms again, toggled through backup frequencies, nothing but routine calls. She heard drone telemetry bursts and logistic chatter. Nothing urgent, nothing new. She checked the time. 07:55. Her right hand hovered near the radar scope. Nothing to act on. Not yet. The voice came back over channel. Viper 1. Continue hold. Expect main force movement at 0800. Confirm passive. Erin keyed her mic without hesitation. Affirm. Viper 1 passive. Standing by. She leaned slightly into her harness and let the jet ride the air. No need to chase anything. If something came, she would see it. No one had assigned her this space, but she was there anyway, just above the noise, waiting, watching, alone. At 0800, Erin's radar sweep began its standard arc west to north. The display was stable, background noise low, but at 0803, the scope blinked once, a sharp return, then two, faint at first, but moving fast, high subsonic, angled southeast from the far side of the ridge. Her eyes narrowed. That vector wasn't listed in the scenario briefing. Not part of Red Force flight pattern. Not part of anything. She keyed secondary comms. Control. Viper 1. I'm seeing unknown radar contacts bearing 280. Fast movers. Low altitude. Confirm friendly or simulated. There was no answer. Only channel noise. Then a voice. Garbled. Viper. Say again. Negative intercept. Hold pattern. The rest clipped into static. Erin tapped her selector. Switched to tertiary. Repeated the call. Still no response. She glanced down at the terrain grid taped to her console. The inbound vector placed both contacts on a path that would cross directly over the Marine forward team. If they held altitude, fine. But they weren't. They were dropping. Fast. Back on the main net. The command frequency was crowded. JTACs calling for drone repositioning. Controllers issuing simulated mortar impact cues. One voice in the mix shouted something about visual confirmation of aircraft passing over Sector Blue, but nobody issued a command. Nobody told Erin what to do. At 0805, the radar tone hit a short spike. One of the tracks shifted to a direct heading. She scanned again. Both signals now closing at high speed. Sub 15 miles. Not simulated behavior. Not exercise flight logic. She toggled weapons panel to stand by. Not armed. Just prepared. She keyed up again. Control. Viper 1. Confirm intercept authority. Contacts are within 10 miles. No ID. Altitude descending. Do I have clearance? Nothing. Not even static this time. The Reapers were shifting their orbit, but too slow. The Marines below were mid-advance, spread across open terrain between hangars and fuel tanks. No cover. No top cover. Aaron could see them through the canopy. Small dots moving in columns. The inbound tracks weren't slowing. She looked back to the radar scope, then to the horizon. She didn't key the mic. Her right hand moved to the throttle. She pushed forward and rolled left into a descending turn. Altitude dropped quick. The G's pulled tight against her harness. Her jet peeled off the racetrack loop, slicing low through the upper valley air. Her position broke from the drone orbit path. The entire flight stack shifted. Inside the command tent, someone shouted, "Who broke stack? Who authorized movement off hold?" Another voice chimed in. "Is that Viper 1? Why is she descending?" No one answered. Aaron didn't either. She kept the dive shallow, controlled. Her HUD blinked with airspeed gain. She eased into a low-level intercept angle, placing herself between the two unknowns and the Marines below. No lock yet, no weapons armed, just position. Her radio crackled again. "Viper, this is control. Abort descent. Repeat. Maintain overwatch. This is not a live contact. Do not engage. Do not descend." But the tone in her headset had changed. The radar warning receiver chirped, a lock ping, then brief silence, then a longer tone. Not a simulation cue, a true targeting sweep. She toggled back to manual radar and focused the cone. The screen confirmed it. Both targets were now tracking her. No transponder return, no beacon, no simulated tag. They were real, or at least flying like it. Aaron glanced at the fuel gauge. Solid. Engine temps normal. She let the tone steady, then banked right, dragging the lock off the ground line and into open airspace. Her position was now completely outside the training profile. Uncoordinated. Unacknowledged. Inside the command tent, operators scrambled to reacquire feed angles. Someone shouted again. "Call sign." Say again. "Who authorized Viper 1 to descend?" No response. Below, on the field, one of the JTACs looked up and pointed. A single F-16 cutting hard across the sun, contrail angled low. He adjusted his scope and muttered, "That's not part of the scenario." Another Marine beside him just watched, jaw tight. At 0807, Aaron leveled out at 11,000 feet. The contacts were now within 5 miles. One of them shifted altitude, climbing fast. The other dropped. Classic split maneuver. She watched them on radar. Her right hand hovered over master arm. Still off. Still passive. Her voice, when it came, was calm. Viper 1. Contacts are maneuvering with intent. No SIM ID. Confirm or deny engagement clearance. Now. Only garbled audio returned. Then the radar screamed again. Full lock. One bandit at her 10 o'clock. Other at low 6. Position closing. She toggled master arm to hot. Her weapon systems came online with a soft chime. Still no orders. Still no name called. So she flew. She dropped 200 feet in a second, rolled tight into a left vector, and angled the F-16 nose toward the incoming flight path. If they wanted position, they'd have to earn it. If they wanted to hit the Marines below, they'd have to pass through her first. The net stayed silent. Her radar flashed warning tones again. One of the inbound jets adjusted heading. She moved to counter, not aggressive, not hostile, but undeniable. The valley narrowed ahead, and behind her, nobody spoke. Not the tower, not the tent, not a single call sign. Just Aaron, flying toward it anyway. The merge happened faster than command could react. 2 Su-30s, painted in desert gray, peeled opposite directions. One rolled high, pulling into a climb to draw her vertical. The other dove fast across the valley, trying to flank from below. Aaron didn't chase either. She cut throttle 2 clicks, kept the Viper level, and used the terrain instead. The warning tones faded. No one had tone. Not yet. She turned left and dropped altitude, riding the canyon's upper edge like a rail. Airspeed increased. Her hands stayed loose on the stick, left glove steady on the throttle. The Block 30 shuddered as the G's built up again. She didn't use radar. Her APG-68 was decades old, lacking active scan. Instead, she relied on her RWR, her instruments, and what she could see with her own eyes. She banked around the cliff wall, tight, and re-entered the open basin, pulling a low G-split to reset her vector. Dust lifted along the ridge behind her. The first Sioux came in hot from high left. She didn't climb. She rolled and held flat, letting his pass overshoot. His afterburners flared briefly, painting the canyon roof with heat. He was aggressive, too clean, too confident. She inverted and followed him through the lower deck, keeping the nose inside his flight path. He tried to break left but clipped the thermal edge too early. Aaron matched the arc, then pitched up into a vertical bracket. For half a second, her Viper lost lift. She let it float. Then she rolled out and cut across his exit band. The enemy banked hard to escape, but he hadn't calculated her roll rate. The older F-16 didn't climb as fast, but it turned sharper down low. She dropped into position behind his 6, just outside the merge bubble. Her sight picture settled. She flipped master arm and eased the stick slightly. No missile tone, no lock, just cannon. The M61 Vulcan fired 3 short bursts. The tungsten rounds tore through his right wing root. One snapped through the engine cowling. There was no explosion, just a sudden yaw, then spin. The aircraft rolled out of control. No lift left to hold it. From the ground, someone caught it on binoculars. Was that guns? That's a gun kill. She hit him with guns. The JTAC stared up. No one said anything else. Aaron broke high to reset, conserving energy. She scanned the sky but didn't see the second fighter. Her RWR ticked once, then cleared. A few seconds passed. Then it chirped again. Directional alert from low right. The second Sioux had circled wide, climbing to re-engage from behind cover. She didn't wait. She cut throttle to idle, let the Viper coast down the draw, and banked into the blind side of a cliff shelf. The warning tone screamed again. A missile fired. Close. It streaked behind her and detonated just past her left tail fin. The jet kicked sideways. Stabilizer alert. Blinked. Amber. She rolled right, flattened out, and pushed nose low. Her fuel levels were fine, engine response good, but her trim was now off-axis. She corrected manually with short taps on the panel and adjusted pitch through feel. The Sioux came in fast from above. He tried to reacquire tone, but she stayed below his radar cone. She didn't pull up. She hugged the canyon, used the natural blind spots. The F-16 vibrated under stress. Her left knee pressed against the side rail to hold line. At 0811, she pulled into a full climbing loop using canyon updraft. Her trajectory hit max angle for 1 second, then she cut throttle again and rolled inverted. The Su-30 passed under her, missing the intercept by seconds. He tried to snap turn, but it was too late. She re-engaged throttle and dove hard, her cannon aligned, the sight picture lit up, her fingers stayed still. She didn't shoot. Not yet. He tried to break right, but she was already inside. She angled across his tail vector, then climbed above and held there. Her jet shook again, fuel band stable, temp redlining. Now. She fired 2 quick bursts. The cannon rounds stitched along his fuselage, hitting control surfaces and engine housing. The jet jolted, stalled, then spun. No flame. Just lift gone. It rolled into a downward spiral, vanishing behind the east ridge. Back on the ground, no one clapped, no cheers, just silence. Someone in the tent leaned over the radar feed. One voice said flatly, "She got both." Still no response from Aaron. She adjusted course, climbed out slowly, then leveled. Her engine hissed steady, fuel near minimum combat level. One stabilizer panel scratched, but no major faults. The sky cleared. No threats left? She said nothing. Just flew level. One old jet, still up, still moving. And everyone watching knew what they'd just seen. The lock held steady. The remaining Su-30 was disciplined. No erratic moves. No overreach. It stayed on Aaron's 6, just beyond the burn line, dancing inside the envelope where a clean shot was possible but not guaranteed. Her radar was degrading. The scope flickered with partial sweeps. Her HUD bled static along the edge. Comms were fractured beyond use. She didn't try to call out. At 0814, she pushed the Viper into a low canyon bank, letting terrain mask her tail. The warning tone faded for 2 seconds, then returned. The Sioux was tracking visually now. The pilot had skill, patience. She recognized it. It meant he was testing her limits before committing to kill. She reached down and killed the last of her display overlay. The partial HUD was no longer useful. Pure distraction. Now it was just airspeed, altimeter, and what she could feel through the frame. That was enough. She'd flown like this before. Not in training. In Helmand. In night. In fire. She let the Viper drift wide through the next ridge split, then cut throttle and flared the air brake. Airspeed dropped hard. Her nose lifted just a few degrees. Not enough to stall. Just enough to bleed drag and make her disappear from line of sight for 3 heartbeats. When she rolled back left, the Sioux had overcorrected. He climbed to get visual. She didn't follow. She cut low again, tight around a rock outcrop that looked like a jagged crescent. Her father once taught her how to trace terrain with only shadows. They'd sat for hours with topo maps under a hanging bulb. She remembered the slope lines, the drop angles, how you could feel a valley's shape in the stomach before the eye caught it. At 0816, she spotted the twin contrails above. The Sioux had reacquired her position and was descending fast. He was forcing altitude to cut escape angles. She didn't fight it. Instead, she throttled to max and pointed nose up at 60 degrees. It looked like retreat. It wasn't. As the Sioux descended to follow, she counted 3 seconds, then flipped the Viper into a rolling scissor. Not a full brake, just a tight axis flip, nose down, throttle idle. She dropped altitude so fast that his targeting line overshot by 50 feet. He tried to correct, but she was already climbing again. A perfect J-hook climb, inverted through the canyon neck. Her G-load spiked. Her hands didn't shake. By the time he came level, she was above him, sun at her back. She didn't need radar. She didn't need a tone. She saw his canopy flash once. That moment of hesitation, of realizing the turn trap was already sealed. She fired one short cannon burst, then another. No overkill. 2 clean streaks. The second burst caught him near the mid-fuselage. The aircraft shuddered, caught fire near the engine cowling, and dropped into a flat spin. She pulled back into climb, let the angle ride for 20 seconds, then leveled at 15,000 feet. Her engine whined, fuel near bingo. Her eyes didn't blink. No comms reconnected, no one called her name. She didn't care. Below, the JTAC watching the sky lowered his scope. He didn't speak. A comms tech beside him just whispered, "It's over." Aaron didn't respond. She turned her jet west, back toward base. No formation, no escort. Just one pilot, one Viper, still in the air. At 0849, the battered F-16 came into final approach over the Mojave tarmac. The nose gear locked with a muted clunk. No fanfare, no calls from the tower. Her landing was clean, centerline steady. The left stabilizer dragged slightly under low hydraulic response. But she compensated with soft rudder taps. The jet touched down at 130 knots. Brakes applied in rhythm. Canopy still closed. The side of the aircraft bore streaks of soot and blistered paint. A dark burn arc curled around the intake. One panel near the avionics bay was melted along the edge. The radar housing was gone. Dead weight now. The machine had no voice left on its own systems. Only silence and scars. She rolled to a full stop at hardstand 4, farthest from the main hangar line. No marshal guided her in. The crew chief hadn't expected her back. Yet the jet stood still, engines winding down, heat bleeding off the metal in shimmering waves. Erin unstrapped slow. No celebration, no rush. She pushed the canopy lever. It hissed and cracked upward, letting the desert heat pour in. The wind was dry. The air smelled like sunburned fuel and sand. She climbed out with the same motions she'd practiced since the beginning. One boot hit the ladder, then the other. No one spoke. A few heads turned from across the tarmac. A tech leaned out from behind a tow cart. A supply NCO paused near the refuel rig. They just watched. No claps, no salute, just eyes that stayed on her. The Marine lieutenant she'd protected stood near the edge of the pad. His face was streaked with sweat and grime. He met her halfway. He didn't offer a handshake, just said, quiet and even, "We don't make it without you." She nodded once, didn't smile. Viper still flies. That was all. She walked past the crew tent. The tech who used to joke about her grounding stood beside a diagnostic cart. He didn't speak, just stepped aside, one hand brushing the brim of his cover. The sun was higher now, no shadows left to hide in. Erin kept walking. The jet cooled behind her. No orders followed, no reprimand, no parade. Only the wind, and the echo of everything that had just changed. She walked back to the spot she always chose, the shade under the tool rack, beside the generator crate. It wasn't much, just a folded camp chair, a scratched thermos, and a grease-streaked floor panel where she'd rested her boots before the sortie. No one blocked her way. No one tried to speak. But every set of eyes nearby followed her movements, quietly, without demand. At 09:15, the crew chief stepped up to the Viper's wing. His gloves were off. He didn't say a word, just placed her helmet gently on the edge of the wing root, facing forward. Then he stepped back and waited. That was all. The sky behind them still held a faint trace of smoke. The last of the flares had drifted apart in the upper thermals. The heat shimmer had softened. The base was calm again, but different. Erin unlaced her boots. Slow, not stiff, just deliberate. She set them down beside the crate, soles up. Then she sat. Same spot as before. Shoulders forward, back loose, hands resting over her knees. She didn't scan the flight line, didn't make eye contact. Her eyes stayed on the ground in front of her. Still, composed, present. Above, in the command trailer, a tech monitoring flight data looked up at the primary display. Her call sign had updated, no longer marked as available in gray font. Now it pulsed solid green, active, logged, operational. The color meant more than status. It meant someone had finally put her name back in the system. Nobody spoke it aloud. They didn't have to. Down below, a gust of wind kicked up dust around the canopy of her jet. The burn marks along the fuselage were already dulling, caked with desert grit. Another line crew tech moved toward the jet with a rag, paused, and waited. He wouldn't touch it yet, not until she walked away. She sat for a while longer, long enough that time stopped mattering. Then the voice came. It wasn't hers. It didn't need to be. You don't need permission to save lives, just the courage to act. And after that, there was only silence. The kind that speaks for everyone.